Okay. All right, so I'm going to give this a shot, folks. So, hello, I'm Francisco, everybody. I'm Marlins historian, whatever you want to call me. And this is I'm going through some stuff that I have in my collection that I just recently acquired. And I thought I'd share it with everybody. It's Sunday. I'm bored. And I didn't feel like streaming MLB The Show because who wants to watch another person streaming a video game on Twitch or Twitter or YouTube. So this is the Florida Marlins 1993 inaugural media guide. So it looks great. Has, of course, actual artwork on the front of it, which is a rarity nowadays in sports. Everything's so templated and just with the graphics that you don't see what most likely was hand-drawn artwork here. I'm sure there's plenty of digital artists that can replicate this with tablets and everything like that, but we don't see it as much, especially in sports. Especially, gosh, I mean, tickets back in the day used to have, just especially for like opening day or like championship series and such, had gorgeous artwork, and that's a lost art nowadays. So you got the front here. It's of course got the Florida Marlins script logo. I like how the dorsal fin of the Marlin is the A here for Marlins there. You've got an actual Marlin leaping out of the ocean. You got some palm trees in the back there, and then you got the reflection on the other side of a. I guess I don't know which player this is. I don't know if it's just a nondescript, generic Marlins player, but he's got, of course, the classic 1993 Marlins uniform with the teal helmet, the teal pinstripes, and such. And of course, it says 1993 inaugural media guide. Is the first one that was ever distributed, and this is, of course, way back in the day before the internet was, of course, mainstream. So these were a must for lots of reporters and broadcasters who were traveling from city to city and knew next to nothing about some of these teams, especially the Marlins, because they were a brand new team. It did have ads in it, which is strange to me, but I guess this must have been available for fans to purchase as well. I'm not sure. I wasn't, I was a wee little lad back in the day, so I had no use for this. But it's got a Budweiser ad in the back of it, so Marlin fans, nothing beats a Bud. So I'm going to assume that this was available for purchase back in '93 over at Joe Robbie Stadium, Pro Player, Land Shark, whatever you want to call it. So, but very nice little, tiny little artwork. Got the little spirals here and such. So, all right, let's open it up and see what we got. I've got these Marlins work gloves here. These are awesome. These are great. I make sure these are, and I actually do use them to do some work around my place too. So they're very nice, very nifty. They've got the Florida Marlins logo on the back. That's pretty, you don't see these. I got these on clearance back at Sports Authority when the Marlins were making their transition to the Miami Marlins. And so a lot of things were on clearance back then. And so you open this, and first page is, of course, the Marlins were, of course, incredibly grateful to Carl Barger, who unfortunately passed away just before the Marlins were able to get off the ground in 1993. He was one of the people to help push the Marlins, was the first president and COO of the Fish. And so he did work with the Pittsburgh Pirates as well. And so they got a nice memoriam here for Carl Barger, 1930 to 1992. And the Marlins, of course, in the inaugural game against the Dodgers on April 5th, 1993, retired the number 5 because Carl Barger's favorite baseball player was Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio threw out the first ceremonial pitch in Marlins history, and the Marlins retired number 5 because that was his number, Joe DiMaggio's number. And of course, Jeffrey Loria, to completely crap on the history of the Marlins, decided to unretire the number. And I get it. Logan Morrison wanted to do something. I think it was for his dad or something. His dad's favorite player was George Brett. I'm going to, yeah, George Brett wore number 5 as well. And Logan Morrison began, hit like what? About 230, about 230 like that. The batting average did next to nothing wearing number 5, and the number remains unretired in Marlins history now. And I don't know. I don't know if the Marlins will ever retire it. I think they do have like a plaque or something for Carl Barger somewhere in Lone Depot Park, but I haven't seen it. Regardless, a nice memoriam here for Carl Barger to open up this media guide, so you can tell how much he meant to the folks that started up the Marlins. And so there you go. Second page here, we got the schedule for the Fish that opening 1993 season. So they got the Dodgers as the opening opponent. Dodgers, of course, used to play out in Vero Beach. And then we've got in here the entire 1993 for the Marlins roster. So it opens up, and you've got all the players. You got, of course, the manager Renee Latchman and all the coaches, and you got all list of all the players, their heights, their batting, their throwing arms, their weights, their birthplaces, their residences, who they played for back in 1992. Their batting averages and stats and whatnot and what have yous. So pretty much most of the players that you would know here. Good old Jeff Conine is all the way down here. So and yeah, so that's the 93 roster completely. So it's just a nice quick little thing for guys to open up and access immediately right away on the second page here, as well as with the schedule. And then behind that is the 93 spring training schedule. Back in Brevard County, the Marlins used to play out in Vieira, Florida. That was their initial spring training complex at Space Coast Stadium. And then once they made the transition from John Henry to Jeffrey Loria, they moved their operations. The Expos used to play out in Jupiter, and they switched with the Marlins, and the Expos moved out to Space Coast Stadium, and then eventually became the Washington Nationals. The Nationals would move on to West Palm Beach in the future to move in with the Astros. But here's the entire spring training schedule and all the sites of where the Marlins' first spring training opponent were the Houston Astros out in Cocoa. So, and they've got the address and everything there for the spring training complexes, all the phone numbers. All right, so here's the table of contents. And man, this thing is chock full of information. A lot of it. More than I had expected, but it's just kind of I guess in a way a culture shock, just a blast from the past as well, but just the way things worked back then. I mean, now we just look everything up with our phones or our computers. So, but that luxury was not available to all of these reporters and media members and fans, and it just wasn't. So they had to have these books and carry these and get new ones every season in order to make sure they were on top of certain things. But yeah, table of contents, the big ones you got, of course, the 93 Marlins. They talk about all the players. They do review all the National League teams as well. There was no interleague play back then, so it was just the National League that they reviewed here. Some brief Marlins history up to that point, as well as a South Florida baseball history, which is pretty cool. And they have expansion history, detailing the history of other expansion clubs, including the Houston Colt 45s, the Royals, the Expos, the Mets, the Blue Jays, pretty much everybody that came before the Marlins. And the Marlins minor leagues as well, their affiliates, their staff, their scouting. Then you have all the media information, radio, TV, Joe Robbie Stadium information, their spring training information, and a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, which is also pretty cool because you see here they got air miles, all-star coaches, all-star Marlins, birthdays, best last, no-hitters, minor league, just a bunch of stuff here. Even why Marlins, why did they choose the name Marlins? So that's some fun stuff here. All right. So let's move on. I hope I keep pushing my camera back. I'm trying this setup here. I've never done this before, but here we go. Marlins. One of the alternate logos for the Marlins here, with the full fish Marlins written out. This M logo, which is more in line with the F logo that they use for the caps, and would have made a nice transition. I recently changed my profile pic to use that M. I recreated it and to see what the Miami Marlins would have looked like if they had just never changed the overall aesthetic of the team. But this is I do remember always seeing this at Olympic Stadium because the outfield walls had all the teams, and they used this logo rather than the normal primary Marlins logo. But you got all the information here. Chairman Wayne Huizenga, all the partners. Dave Dombrowski, Executive Vice President and General Manager. There's a few guys here, of course, that if you're a Florida Panthers fan from way back in the day, you'll notice some names here too, because a lot of these folks that, on the executive end especially, that did some stuff with the Marlins also were working with the Florida Panthers, so they were pulling off double duty, and I would assume doing stuff with the Miami Dolphins too. Okay, let's see. Baseball operations, medical and clubhouse staff, a bunch of names, bunch of people. So, look, even Al Avila out here, who would eventually become the general manager of the Detroit Tigers. John Bowles, who would become the Marlins manager a couple of times and a couple of stints there. Of course, Dave Dombrowski, who should be a Hall of Fame executive with the way the success that he's had in his career. And business operations, communications here, finance and administration, sales and marketing, bunch of stuff. I'm going to try and speed this along. I'm already 13 minutes in. Are you wow, sheesh. This is 13 minutes. I'm not even a couple of pages in. There's so much information in such a small amount of space. So we got a whole big thing here about Wayne Huizenga to start. It does detail his business upbringing, but starts out mainly with his baseball pursuits, buying 50% of Joe Robbie Stadium, eventually getting the whole thing, as well as the Miami Dolphins, and being awarded the Marlins back in June 10th, 1991. If you look at my Twitter page, on my bio, I put birthday. It's not my real birthday, but it is June 10th, 1991. And it's just because it's the birth of the Marlins, not my actual birthday. But I hope any Marlins fans out there, that's why that's there. That's the reference for that. So he was awarded the franchise in June 10th, 1991. It was approved on July 5th, the Marlins and the Rockies. And so it details all his philanthropy and all the things he's done, especially in Broward County. And then a bunch of other people. Not sure who else is here. A bunch of other people. Yeah. So go back here. Harry Huizenga, I think that's Wayne's father. His son here, Wayne Huizenga Jr. Here's Dave Dombrowski and all his accomplishments up to that point. He was with the Expos before he came to the Marlins. And if anybody knows of the Expos' illustrious scouting and farm system, way back in the day, they churned out so many excellent players. It's crazy how many players came through the Montreal Expos system. It's a shame, really, that they never won the World Series. given the amount of talent that they had come through them. I mean, you had Pedro Martinez, you had, I'm not, like, just at certain points, not even complete, but they mainly were able to scout and locate players from other clubs or just drafting them themselves, going international. They were elite back then, and it's just unfortunate that they never had or never chose to spend the money to create such an elite team that could last for years, and they probably would still be in Montreal had things been different. Not just 1994, but other things as well. Before '94, the Expos could have been way more elite than they were. So just a bunch of stuff here, and some other people. But I'm just going to be highlighting things that I saw jump out at me. But then you got the '93 Marlins, the actual the players here. So let's move on there. So we start off with the manager. You got Renee Latchman, the original first ever manager of the Florida Marlins, and his history. They got his playing career, his managerial career as well, in the minors and such. And I believe, let me see, I think he was part of, he was, last 6 seasons as a coach with the Oakland A's. So he won a World Series with Tony La Russa's staff there. Marcel Latchman, his brother, was the pitching coach. And you got Cookie Rojas out here. Was the third base coach, the first third base coach for the Marlins. And now we get on over to the players themselves. You got Alex Arias, who stuck. He was one of the original Marlins and stuck with them for a long time as a utility bench player. Got himself a ring in '97. See, Jack Armstrong. I'm taking off these gloves. It's starting to get hot. I thought it would be a nice little thing, but I'm going to take them off. Okay, and it's very unwieldy to peruse pages with. I'm going to keep going here. Brett Barbary. Let's see, Ryan Bowen, Andres Berumen. Keep going here. Chris Carpenter, but not that Chris Carpenter. Let's see, we'll keep going here. It's a bunch of everybody's stats and everything like that. Of course, Chuck Carr, rest in peace to Chuck Carr, but we got his information here. Hector Carrasco, Scott Champarino, and there he is. There's Jeff Conine. All of his information here. Where he was in 1992, his MLB career up to that point, made his debut back in 1990 with the Kansas City Royals. His hitting breakdown, career highlights up to that point. Jim Corsi, keep going here. Steve Decker. Orestes Destrade. Let's see, Carl Everett. Monty Ferris. Junior Felix. Brian Harvey. The Marlins' first ever closer. His accomplishments up to that point. The AL Rolaids relief man in 1991. Let's see. Trevor Hoffman, Hall of Famer, was part of the Marlins. And the Marlins, of course, traded him for Gary Sheffield. A trade that did work out for both clubs there. They can just vote Gary Sheffield into the Hall of Fame. It can actually be labeled a Hall of Famer for a Hall of Famer. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe someday. Dave Magadan. Let's see, Jose Martinez. Let's keep going here. Ramon Martinez, but not that Ramon Martinez. Mike Myers, but not that Mike Myers. Alright, keep going. Scott Pose, Pat Rapp. Benito Santiago. Y'all know who Benito Santiago is, right? Everybody knows who he is. Okay. Yeah, wore number 09 because regular number 9 was not clear when he wore his catcher's gear, so he added a 0 there so people could tell what number he wore. Let's see, Gary Scott, keep going, keep going, keep going. I'm gonna move this further. Dave Weathers, there you go. I'm just guys that I recognize, and Walt Weiss that had prominent major league careers that I'm highlighting here. Darrell Whitmore, Nigel Wilson, who I think was the Marlins' first ever player signed, if I do recall. Not entirely sure. Geronimo Baroa, Jeffrey Don Gleaton, and Charlie Huff. There he is. He was born in Hawaii, Hialeah's own Charlie Huff here. So he was 45 on opening day as he threw out the first pitch for the Marlins. So there's his career accomplishments. He's got much longer pages to go through, more accolades to show off. His playoff records, his all-star game appearance back in 1986. We'll keep going here. Charles Johnson, there we go. First ever draft pick for the Marlins. University of Miami's own. Of course, won the '97 World Series with the Fish. Keep going here. Let's see, Terry McGriff, who is actually related to Fred McGriff, who is also the uncle of Charles Johnson. So he's the cousin of Fred McGriff and the uncle of Charles Johnson. And isn't Gary Sheffield related to them as well? If I can recall, there's a lot of connections with a lot of certain players around that time that were like cousins and uncles and such. But yeah. Robert Perusing, Gus Polidor. We're just going through guys now. Guys, oh boy. All right, so and then we have here rules of interest. We got player limits, trading regulations, the save rule, what constitutes a night game. Any game that starts at 5 p.m. or later is considered a night game here, according to this booklet. Consecutive hitting streaks, what constitutes that? Consecutive game hitting streaks, playing streaks, determining batting average, all these other things, determining magic numbers, win-loss percentages, and such. All right, so the next big section here is the National League. So this is where they cover all of the other teams in the National League, just the National League. They don't cover the American League. There was no interleague play back then. And this is also pretty cool. So they got all the teams here. They got the Atlanta, it goes, I think, in alphabetical order. The Atlanta Braves first, who used to play in the National League West. They've got their mailing address, their business phone numbers, who their manager is, general manager, their record, where the hotel that the Marlins stayed at back in Atlanta, the hotel the Braves stayed at here in South Florida. They stayed in Fort Lauderdale, apparently. Their series in 1993, what they would, the games that they would play that season. And they've got the outline of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, as well as the facts about the stadium, the what kind of grass, the just pretty much everything here. The first game play, just some shorts, yeah, the dimensions, but it's pretty cool that they got the outlines of the actual stadium itself, and then a photo of the stadium. The Chicago Cubs, where the Marlins stayed at in Chicago. Because pretty much all these teams stayed at the Marriott Marina out in Fort Lauderdale. But the Cubs, Wrigley Field, the outline of Wrigley Field. And a photo of Wrigley Field. Let's keep moving here. The Reds, and this is back in the day, of course, of the circular donut multi-purpose cookie cutter stadiums. So we're gonna see a lot of them, especially in the National League. So we're gonna see a lot of the circular Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, a circular Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati as well. Not circular Mile High Stadium, so this is the Rockies, where the Marlins stayed out in Denver. Circular Houston Astrodome, which was also concrete, circular, multi-purpose stadium. It just happened to have a dome over it. So the Houston Astrodome, still standing. Nothing's in it, but still standing. Dodgers, the LA Dodgers, Dodger Stadium, where the Marlins stayed out in LA. Yeah, the Olympic Stadium, Montreal. Shea Stadium, which was supposed to be a completely circular concrete, but they just never enclosed it, and for the better, actually, for the better. Gave some sort of character to Shea. Of course, Veterans Stadium, which was not perfectly circular, but still multi-purpose in that same vein as everything else. Pittsburgh, Three Rivers Stadium, just as circular as the rest of them. So, keep going. The Cardinals, another circular, Busch Stadium. And I think by this point, the Arizona Cardinals, or the St. Louis Cardinals football team had already moved to Arizona, and the Rams hadn't moved back. So, just the Cardinals at that point. Jack Murphy Stadium, which at this time, for when the Marlins were playing them in '93, had not been completely enclosed just yet. There was still some sort of opening out in right field, but it would eventually be enclosed for more seats for football for the Padres. And then the last one, Candlestick Park out in San Francisco. And there you go. Let's see. I'm just trying to see most of the teams where these teams stayed. Well, a lot of them stayed at the Marriott Marina in Fort Lauderdale, but some stayed in. Let's see. You got Turnberry Isle Resort and Club. That's where the Cardinals stayed at. The Giants stayed at Don Shula's Hotel and Golf Club out in Miami Lakes. So, all right. Then we got Marlins history. Hey, that's me. Marlins history next. So we got the chronology of the creation of the Marlins from August 8th, 1985, when the National League was permitted to expand to 14 clubs because the American League had 14 teams. So to even up both leagues, they would go out and search for candidates for two new baseball teams, and all of the fruitions here, a bunch of cities bidding to become the new members of the National League. So Wayne Huizenga in 1990, that's when he threw out his intentions for creating a Major League Baseball team when he purchased half of half of Joe Robbie Stadium. And let's see. We'll keep going here. I lost some image there for a bit, but we'll keep going here. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah. So Wayne Huizenga is making his move, and of course renovating Joe Robbie Stadium to back in 1991 to make it more suitable for baseball. Of course, Joe Robbie, when he was making Joe Robbie Stadium, had extra space on the field because he did expect that an expansion baseball team would eventually play in Miami, and wanted Joe Robbie to at least be a temporary venue for said baseball team. Temporary kind of went out the window after a while, but it was home. But so 1991 is when they started the renovations. Then the Dolphins, Wayne Huizenga, Joe Robbie Stadium hosted some exhibition games. The Baltimore Orioles used to have spring training in Miami. They had, of course, the original Miami Marlins, and then the second version of the Miami Marlins and / Miami Orioles were farm club of the Orioles for quite a bit there. And so the Orioles played out in Miami Stadium as their spring training complex. And so they hosted some games out in Joe Robbie against the Yankees in 1991. And of course, a bunch of other stuff, meetings and things like that. But then eventually, June 10th, 1991, Fay Vincent announced that Denver and South Florida were the two teams chosen to be the new members of baseball, Major League Baseball. And then July 5th, 91 is when they approved them. And then we had the Marlins. And then the run-up for the Marlins, their minor league teams, they're hiring their general managers and all that other stuff to the run-up to Major League Baseball in 1993. And then a brief history of South Florida baseball. So this is also a nice little thing. They do talk about all of the past minor league teams, and of course the history of baseball here. So we've got a bunch of stuff here. And not just in Miami, but also Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. So this is all pretty cool. and talked about the original Marlins. Bill Veeck was ran the original 1950s Marlins. Of course, Satchel Paige pitched here as well, which was great. And they talk about their massive game that they played at the Miami Orange Bowl, where Satchel Paige was the starter. And so they do include here a photo of Satchel Paige with the Marlins, along with Jimmy Fox, who was one of the coaches on that original Miami Marlins staff. And then we've got expansion history. Got a bunch of stuff here as well. Wow, I'm running this 36 minutes already. Sheesh. It's a long time, but yeah, they talk about all the other teams. The LA Angels, the second version of the Washington Senators, the Colt 45s, the Mets, the Royals, the Pilots, the Expos, the Padres, the Mariners, the Blue Jays, and now the Marlins and Rockies. And then the latest one after this was the 98 one with the Diamondbacks and Devil Rays. And you got the expansion draft selections for the Rockies and the Marlins. And there's, yeah, Nigel Wilson was the first one. There he is, right there. I don't think he even played a game with the Fish. I'm not even sure. I think he did. I think he did play, but like not very much. Then we have history of all the other expansion teams and their selections as well. I feel like this was not truly necessary, but the fact that they put it in here is pretty cool. I got the Mariners, the Blue Jays, and pretty much, yeah, the Colt 45s, the Padres, the Expos, the Mets. Bunch of stuff here, man. Casey Stengel, of course, was the original Mets manager. LA Angels, the Washington Senators. Single season, at that point, expansion records, top records back then as well. And they even talk about like first year attendance, and they even have NBA expansion records here with the Miami Heat is included here. NFL expansion, Miami Dolphins are there too as an AFL team, and the NHL as well. Of course, the Panthers were also in the works around this time too, and some more expansion facts. Then we got the minor leagues here. So we've got all the minor league teams for the Marlins at that point in 1993. They had affiliates. Their AAA team was in the Pacific Coast League, the Edmonton Trappers. Then their the New York Penn single A team was the Elmira Pioneers out in New York. High Desert Mavericks were in the California League in single A. In Adelanto, California, the High Desert Mavericks. And then the Gulf Coast Marlins played out in Kissimmee, in the part of rookie ball there. The Kane County Cougars played in the Midwest League in single A. And then the Dominican Summer League team out in the DR, rookie Marlins there. You got minor league managers here. Freddie Gonzalez, there he is. So Freddie Gonzalez is one of the Marlins OGs, and he's passed through the Marlins time and time again. And maybe there might be one more time where Freddie Gonzalez might pass through the Marlins system. He's come back various times with the Fish, but he is an OG with the Marlins. Carlos Tosca, some people that I recognize. Rod Allen, here he is as well. I already highlighted this before, and he's even shown his himself as well. He was with the Gulf Coast Marlins at this time, and so now he's of course on the broadcast team for the Marlins now. So Rod Allen is also an OG with the Fish. So we're gonna keep going here. I'm trying to find names that kind of stick out to me. Tony Taylor would eventually move up and be part of the Florida Marlins staff. I think he was with John Bowles' staff. And he got the scouting directors here as well, for all of the areas here in the United States and abroad, international as well. Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. And then you got the some tidbits here of the Marlins minor league teams: the Erie Sailors, Gulf Coast Marlins, and then all of their minor league players here, as well as a long list of guys here. Felix Heredia, who would be on the Marlins 97 team. So we do see some guys here that were in the minors that eventually did make it to the majors and with the Marlins themselves. So Felix Heredia is there. Let's see who else. Trying to find other guys that stand out to me here. Not sure. Rich Ireland, Greg Jazz, Scott Johnson. I'm trying to see if anybody here stands out to me. But I don't see much else, for now at least. I'm going to keep perusing. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this guy right here. There's Mike Redmond. So, yeah, Mike Redmond does show up in the Marlins 1993 media guide. Would eventually come up and win the 2003 World Series with the Fish, and would eventually become their manager. So there's another guy there. We got a hero here. We got Edgar Renteria, was in the Marlins farm system at this time as well. Would, of course, get the game-winning hit in 97. Would win another ring with the San Francisco Giants at the end of his career, and was the World Series MVP. And then we got Tony Saunders, who would be part of the 1997 staff and win the World Series with the Fish then. Keep going here. Keep going. Trying to see if there's anybody else that stands out to me. And I think that's it for me. You got the Marlins Minor League Players of the Year at this point before the 93 season. And then Marlins Media Services, got some folks here as well, how to get your credentials and stuff like that. Sunshine Network was the original broadcasting TV station for the Fish. You got Jay Randolph, the play-by-play guy. Hall of Famer Gary Carter, rest in peace, was the analyst there. Joe Angel was on radio at that time, so was Dave O'Brien. These guys would also make their way up to become the Marlins play-by-play guys, and Dave O'Brien would move on to ESPN later on. There's some water damage on this thing, so you're going to hear some crinkling from that as I'm trying to open through these pages. Felo Ramirez as well. Rest in peace to him. Marlins Spanish Radio, he's an OG as well. So, got 560 WQAM as the English inaugural station for the Fish. He also back then covered the Heat. And then you got Joe Robbie Stadium. Information there. You got the dimensions here that they had planned out for Joe Robbie. But I find it interesting here that I'm trying to move this as close as possible, but they didn't outline the Bermuda Triangle here. So this isn't entirely accurate. At this point, they just had a flat wall there, and then they would create the notch for the Bermuda Triangle. So I guess that might have been a last-minute decision before they printed this out. So there you go. Interesting things. And then some more stadium facts of Joe Robbie Stadium at that point. The first baseball game, soccer game, Super Bowl, baseball seating, baseball first, and then the Marlins spring training facility. you go. And the map of the complex in Brevard County. So it wasn't completed until 1994. So there you go. And yeah, so first time, and this is I guess for the media members to write down when all the Marlins first started happening. So they had some lines here so that you could write them in their first sweep. It's some water damage here as well, but and then where the Marlins stay at on all their road trips, and they got like this little thing with the Marlins inaugural 1993 logo here. And that's it. That's it for this. With the Marlins 1993 media guide. Thanks everybody. I think the music stopped a while ago. It was supposed to last much longer, but oh well. Thanks for watching this. If you tuned in, I got a bunch more that I'm not a bunch. I'm just gonna get key years here. So I've got the 93 one, I've got the 98 one. I'm looking to get the 97 one. I've got the 04 one and the 2012 one. And I think I will get the 2003 one and probably the 2011 one. That was the last one as the Florida Marlins. And I might get 2018. That's when Sherman and Jeter got the team. And 2019 with the other rebrand. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't even know if they have a print one anymore at that point for 2018 to 2019. I have to check. I haven't really checked. I would doubt it at this point. I think this is all digital now. So I will see which one was the last one that they ever made. And maybe 2017, that was their all-star season. But yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good night.